Hello my friends, welcome back to my channel. Okay, so today I have a video that I am very, very excited about, and it's one of my favorite types of romances to read, and it is cozy romances. So now, listen, I truly love heartbreaking, soul-shattering, angsty romances. I love them so much. That's always going to be my favorite. I want to feel pain. I do. I want to be emotionally destroyed when I'm reading romances. But, you know, like all things, you can't just do that all the time or you're just going to be miserable. So I also really love to sort of intersperse cozy romances in there as often as allowed, and I've debated about including some of these on here because I think cozy leaves that, I mean, that word leaves a lot up to interpretation. So some of these books do have some content that could be heavy, but in my opinion it doesn't feel heavy on the page. You know, we're not dwelling in those moments of heaviness. The overall vibe and feel of these books is cozy, heartwarming, happy, just a good time with very swoony romances, usually great banter and things like that. So let's go ahead and get into the recommendations. So one of the first books that I want to recommend, the one that actually inspired this video, is Funny Feelings. So this is a book that has been getting a lot of traction. I know a lot of my friends have read and loved this and recommended it, and for good reason. This book is a true delight. This book is so lovely, cozy, heartwarming, and just swoony, and I adored every single page of it. This is basically about our hero and heroine who are friends to lovers and fake dating and single dad. We've got all those good tropes in there. And our heroine is a comedian. Her manager is also her best friend. His name is Meyer. Her name is Farley. And she just had an opportunity presented to her where she can go on tour with these very famous comedians. And in order to do that, or not in order to do that, but something that those other comedians think will be really good and will draw people to her through like social media and things like that, is if she has a relationship, like a boyfriend that they can post about and sort of hype it up. So naturally she asks her manager and friend Meyer to be that guy, not realizing that not only does she have feelings for him, I mean, she realizes she has feelings for him, but he definitely has feelings for her as well. But she doesn't know that. So, of course, these two are in this fake dating relationship, and there's mutual pining, and it is just so delightful. This book it truly just felt like a warm hug. Like, this is one of those books that I finished reading it, and I was like, okay, this was so happy and heartwarming, and it really just like made you believe in love, and I adored it. There's also some really excellent deaf representation. The single dad, Meyer's daughter, is deaf, and it was beautifully handled in here. Her relationship with Farley, the heroine, was also beautiful. I just adored this book, and it's popular for good reason. Very cozy. Okay, this next book that I want to recommend is actually called Bright Like Wildfire by Juliet Cross, and this is her contemporary romance. I adore Juliet Cross. I think she has a real gift for writing, not just writing in general, but I think she has a really good way of building up the romance that feels very swoony and very believable, and she also infuses that with these little gestures and glances and all those things that I really love personally. And this is a small town romance, and it was just completely delightful. This is one of the softer books I've read from her. Her Stay a Spell series, some of them have harder, mysterious, sometimes kind of darker, not super dark, but plots in them, and this one was just like cozy the whole way through. But this couple had such great chemistry. So this is between Betty and Bennett. I've got my little notebook down here. Of course I do. Betty is the heroine, and she is a school teacher, and Bennett is the romantic lead, and he is a little bit grumpy and has been harboring feelings for her for a long time. And of course he disguises them with some antics, some of them including glitter bombs, and they end up cast together. They're also like working on this small play together. They, you know, are involved in that. So, drama nerds unite over this. It was delightful. They end up cast together as the romantic leads in this play, and of course, as they're acting out their feelings on stage, they end up transferring over into real life, and it was just delightful. You know, something that I really love about Juliet Cross's books that always put them in the cozy category for me is how she handles humor really well. So not only does she have very quiet, homey feeling moments in this book, but also some really great swoon, but there's always infused with this subtle and sometimes not so subtle humor, and usually that comes in the form of banter between the hero and heroine, and there's baby goats in here that keep going in the heroine's house. Like, this book was just a delight, and I loved it so much. Okay, so now this next book is one that I've talked about a lot, and everybody else has talked about a lot, but I feel like this series specifically, actually everything I've read from Elsie Silver kind of notches into a cozy, comforting read for me. But this series specifically feels very cozy, and I think that Elsie Silver, the book I'm talking about is Flawless, by the way. Elsie Silver deals with hard topics in a way that never feels overwhelming or puts you in that pit of despair. She does it in a way that is really very carefully done, and I appreciate that a lot. And this book, Flawless, is the one that I wanted to mention. It's the first book in this series. It's about a bull rider, Rhett, and how he's sort of fallen into disgrace on like social media and from his sponsors for saying some things about milk that were less than complimentary. And in come the heroine, Summer, who is basically like his PR manager's daughter, and she's going to try and restore his reputation. Now, she's been crushing on him for a very, very long time, since she was a teenager, and so she's got all of this attraction for him, and he is very attracted to her. And truly, this is one of the most satisfying romances I've read, just in the way that he is so very drawn to her, how he is so attracted to her, but also how he sees beneath the attraction and starts to really appreciate her on a deeper level. I felt like that was really beautifully well done here. The tension in this book was so great, like the tension between the couple before they actually finally do anything. Chef's kiss perfection. And maybe part of the reason I put this in a cozy romance category is because it's in a Western type setting. Like, this is cowboy romance, and I feel like that can be, by definition, not entirely, Pam Godwin, I'm looking at you, can feel cozy. And I think that definitely helped here, the setting. Also, her relationship with her dad was fantastic and really added to the cozy quality. The next book I have to recommend is also another one that I've talked about a lot, and it is Sword Heart by T. Kingfisher. This book feels so cozy. Honestly, I've read some of T. Kingfisher's horror books before, and even though there are moments in that book that is deeply unsettling and creepy, she balances it so well with some wit and charm and humor and just sort of cozy feelings, and that definitely translated to this fantasy romance. So this is definitely a fantasy first, but the romance is absolutely there. The romance pulls the plot along, but this is not a super steamy fantasy romance, you know what I'm saying? So don't go into it thinking that it's like that, but this is one of the best told stories that I think I have ever read. It's just beautifully written, it's very charming, it's funny, it has such a great setup, and the way that these two like fall in love and stay in love, it just is so cozy, and I loved it so much. The basic premise of this is we have heroine Hala, who her great uncle just passed away and ended up, so now she's responsible for the estate. It opens with that knowledge and the family coming in trying to marry her to one of the cousins so that they can own the estate. Hala, however, does not want to marry this guy at all. She feels a lot of despair. She thinks he's kind of a vile individual, honestly. And they realize she doesn't want to marry him, so in order to prevent her from leaving, they lock her in this room. And in this room is a giant sword, which she sees on the wall, and she's like, okay, this is it. This is my time. I refuse to marry this guy. I cannot escape. I'm going to just, unalive myself on this sword. And so she proceeds to take her blouse off, puts the sword to her breast, and of course it's a magic sword, and out pops Sarkis, the hero, who is this warrior who has been sort of like a genie type of thing. He's stored in the sword until he's called forth to battle at times like this. So this book is so charming. He is so bamboozled by the fact that this beautiful woman, summoned him to battle in her bedchambers when usually he's summoned on the battlefield. And he does everything in his power to protect her from that moment on. Like, she is who he's going to protect, even if that means from in-laws or bandits or whatever. It's just so charming, so beautiful, great, excellent banter. This book was just purely delightful, and you gotta read it. Okay, so now this next book is by Mariana Zapata, and it is All Roads Lead Here. So this is one of the books, actually I think this is the only, maybe, don't quote me on that. This book does deal with grief. The heroine, Aurora, is dealing with the death of her mother and trying to come to terms with that. But once again, I feel like Mariana Zapata really handles that heavy topic in a way that is addressed, but doesn't make you feel a lot of despair and lingering in that moment. At least for me, it didn't. So I think she handled that heavy topic really well, especially because it is the catalyst that moves her into what gets her involved with the love interest. She ends up moving to this town in, I believe, Colorado, and she ends up meeting Rhodes, the hero, who is a gruff, grumpy single dad. The slow burn in here is epic, takes a very, very, very long time, and we do get to see our hero sort of very slowly and gradually soften towards her. And I mean, that's really what you're there for in a Mariana Zapata, right? You want to see that moment where that grumpy hero finally comes undone for the heroine. It was just a thing of beauty here. I really loved the family relationships in here. I think my favorite aspect of this book, however, was the teenage son. The hero's teenage son and Aurora. They had a beautiful relationship, and he was just such a great teenage character. I think it's so not common, but if kids are in romance, usually they're younger kids, and I think that he was very well represented as a teenager, and also just had a lot of great moments with the heroine, and it was just lovely. So if you're looking for a cozy romance in like mountain setting with a grumpy dad, then you gotta check this one out. Okay, now this book is one where I feel like this author in general does cozy romances really well. They always feel very cozy, and it is Nobody's Princess by Erica Ridley. This is part of her Winchester series, and this one was really delightful. I felt like everything about this book just kind of worked for me, but I think that the big draw in this for me was the characters themselves, and I think that this is a case where the romance for me kind of was secondary. It wasn't like the thing that kept me reading and loving this book, but the unique setting, the diverse characters, and also the way that they came together in the beginning was just a thing of beauty. So the basic premise of this is we have our heroine. Her name is Kunigundi, and she wants to be the first female guard in her family's royal line, and she is from Africa. She's a beautiful woman. She ends up in London, the city, and she's sort of like running and hiding from people, and Graham, our hero, who is one of the adopted Winchesters, sees her, and he believes that like he's supposed to protect her and take care of her, and it's just so charming. The thing that draws him to her initially is that he realizes that she is from his home country, and they have a connection that way. But it was just adorable to watch them develop this friendship, to learn the backstories of their characters, and they do have a really beautiful romance, but it does sort of slow burn simmer the whole way through. But I just loved the way that he was like, I'm gonna protect you, that's what I'm here for, and she's like, I'm gonna protect myself. Like, it was just very charming, and Erica Ridley has a very cozy way of telling her stories that just feels comforting to me, and this one was a really good time. I enjoyed it a lot. Okay, so the last book I have on my list is a classic, and I think that in general, I would say this author's books are always cozy, they're always comforting, they always hit the mark for me, and the book I want to talk about is When a Scot Ties the Knot by Tessa Dare. This is a classic historical romance, and truly it gives you everything you're looking for in a historical romance that feels romantic, swoony, charming, great banter. It's just a great time. This is part of her Castles Ever After series, and we have our heroine, whose name is Madeline, who is really good at drawing, but a little bit shy and socially awkward, and she feels like she is never going to find anybody who is going to be happy with her and who wants to be, you know, when she has her season, nobody's going to want to offer for her. So what does she do? She invents a guy that she's actually engaged to, and she proceeds to write these letters to him. Now, of course, when that happens, the letters actually do fall into the hands of our hero. His name is Captain Mackenzie, and he shows up with the letters, surprisingly. It's a little bit quirky how he actually ends up with the letters, and he's like, hey, I'm the guy you've been writing to. It's just so endearing and cute and charming, and I just really, really love this. Tessa Dare has just a writing style that makes it very easy to engage with her stories, makes it very easy to sink into them, and just feels like a warm hug when you're reading them. So if you haven't read this book, please pick it up. But truthfully, I feel like every single book I've read from Tessa Dare gives me those vibes of just cozy, happy. I'm just so happy to be reading this and falling in love with these characters. So I hope y'all enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you have made it this far, please feel free to leave me any type of weather emoji. You can leave me one where you're at and let me know what your weather's like there. It's sunny here today, but there's still snow on the ground. So thanks for watching, my friends. I'll see y'all in my next video.